Hi guys, my name is Tammy and I am the owner of Imagine Play. In this video, I want to talk about what you need to know to find a location for your indoor play facility. I found that it was really difficult for us to find a location for an indoor play facility. It actually was a really lengthy and very stressful process. It was very different than some of the other spaces that I've rented in the past. I actually have a studio here in Sacramento, and with those commercial spaces, I went to go look at the space. If I liked it, I would sign an application, they would check my credit, and then send me a lease. It was just very painless and quick. With this, it was the opposite of that, and this is the reason why I kind of wanted to do this video. When you're looking for a space, obviously you want to kind of think about size, and we started off looking at about 2,000 square foot, and we ended about 3,000 square foot. There were a lot of open spaces in Elk Grove, and here's a few things that you kind of need to know about that. Even though spaces are vacant, owners might not be quick to negotiate with you, or might not be quick to fill those spaces because they are looking for things in particular. And what I've heard was that some owners don't really care if their spaces are vacant because they get a tax write-off for it. So just know that even though you might be really eager to rent a space, the owners might not be eager to negotiate with you. So really they have the upper hand here, okay? So when you're looking at spaces, if you find a space that you like, then what you want to do is you want to kind of contact the leasing agent on it, okay? And in your leasing email or in your inquiry email, I would say something like, hey, I'm really interested in your space in this address, and I want to use it for this type of purpose, and you want to give a brief description of what you're wanting to open, and then ask if they have some sort of allotment for tenant improvements, because you'll find that a lot of the spaces you might be looking at need a little bit of work. So we looked at spaces that, you know, went from anything where like they need AC and like a whole bathroom built. It was like just an empty space. And then there was other spaces where we felt like we just needed to knock down some walls and things like that. But all that stuff kind of costs money, right? So you want to see if the owner is willing to negotiate some kind of tenant improvements, because that might be really important to you, and it was really important to us, okay? So some of the trouble that we ran into was a few different things. One, there was a lot of spaces in Elk Grove that were open, that met our square footage requirement, but when we contacted the owner and told them a little bit about our use, some of them would say, hey, you know, we don't really think that's a good, you know, addition to our center. Some of them had other tenants that had like lease restrictions that didn't allow like another similar business or a business they felt like was competing in their complex. So one of the owners came back and said they felt like there wasn't enough parking for us, so that could be a problem, right? And some of them, just the zoning just wouldn't allow our use in there. So that really dwindled us down to literally like 2 or 3 spaces that would allow us to be in there. So it was just a really small amount of spaces that would actually even allow our use and made it possible for us to even open. So that was the trouble we ran into. The other trouble that we found was that either tenant improvements were just too high and we just couldn't accommodate a loan or accommodate, you know, spending that much money for a startup, you know, or we found that you know, the cost of rent might be really high. So I am in California, so what you're looking at for a general commercial space is usually about $150 to $2 a square foot. So if you're thinking about renting a 3,000 square foot space, that's about what, $6,000 a month, and then that doesn't include triple net. So usually most owners will ask for triple net, and that's usually basically kind of like an HOA for commercial spaces, and it will take care of like, you know, just general common area maintenance and property taxes and things like that. And so that's on top of your rents, you know. So you might end up paying like $8,000 or $10,000 for your space. So just make sure that you are pricing yourself accordingly to be able to meet that every single month. That is really high, you know, and we ended up going with a space that was the smartest decision for us as far as, you know, what it would cost for us in rent monthly, and then also what actually permitted our use, and you know, it ended up not being the location that we loved, but it was the smartest decision on our part, okay? So once you kind of contact the owner, they will allow your use in there and all that goes well, then you kind of want to talk to zoning just to make sure that you're permitted to be in that area. You might also want to do this even beforehand, you know, just kind of find out which areas or which zones you're permitted in your city, because some businesses are not permitted in certain areas, or they might allow your use, but you needed to pay for use permits. So you kind of want to know those things up front. Those things are all things that kind of hinder you from renting your commercial space or looking for a space or making it really difficult to find a space, okay? So once all those things in order, you found all the ones that basically found the ones that check all the boxes, right? The next thing to do is really to kind of start lease negotiations, but you kind of really don't want to do that until you know what it's going to cost to kind of build your space out. So you could ask to see if they have a contractor they work with, and if they don't, you can find your own contractor and get a few different bids on building out the space the way that you want. Once the bid comes back, and that could take like 1 or 2 weeks, that took a really long time too. Once the bids come back, then now you can go ahead and come back to the owner and say, okay, I would like to see if the owner can pay for a certain amount of the tenant improvements. You know, it could be however much you want, $5 or $6 a square foot. It's in your benefit if you can actually pay for most of the tenant improvements yourself. But if you can't, then, you know, some owners might amortize the improvements for you. Some of them might not, you know. So you know, having a good amount of startup funds is beneficial for you to negotiate your lease, because the standard is usually about 3 to 4 months free rent, but if you can pay for most of the tenant improvements, you know, might be able to ask for more as well to kind of help with that. It really just depends on you. Okay, so a proposal is submitted to the owner, and the owner will look at it and then basically tell you, you know, what they agree to and not agree to, and you can go back and forth on this many times. So for us, it took about 3 weeks to actually negotiate the lease that we're at now, and that was after we found the second space, okay? We were actually actively looking at a space beforehand, but found that the tenant improvement was just too high. So then we looked at a different space, and then the second space is what we got into, and that took about 3 weeks. And in those 3 weeks, it was like the most stressful 3 weeks of my life. So during the proposal process, they will probably ask for your financial statement and financial information. Now this is the part where it gets pretty stressful, because they're going to not only pull your credit, but they're going to ask you all types of things, you know, regarding your business plan. They'll ask you regarding how you spend your money. If you ever bought a house, then you know how the questions can get kind of intrusive like that. So just be prepared that, you know, if you don't have strong credit and you don't have a ton of startup funds, they're going to, or, you know, all those things, they will ask you a lot of those questions, and it will make you feel quite uncomfortable. For us, it was really eye-opening, and definitely made us feel uncomfortable. But in the end, I mean, we finally signed the lease, and I was just really glad for it to be done. And, you know, I'm just happy for us to be able to move forward with opening Imagine Play. So I hope this video kind of helps you guys, kind of give you a little bit of insight of kind of the journey we went through, and the trouble that we found ourselves getting into when we're finding a location for an indoor play facility. If you have any questions, please make sure that you message me or comment below, and maybe I will answer it. Make sure you follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and keep up on these videos. Subscribe. All right, talk to you next time. Bye.